I stared at my phone, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it echoing in my ears. The message was short, cold, final. You will not be joining us. My wife prefers to keep it only family. I read it again and again. Each time it cut deeper. My fingers trembled as I clutched the phone tighter. My son, my only son, Ethan, had just told me I was not family. And the cruelest part, I had just signed the final payment for the house he and his wife, Madison, were moving into next week. A house I paid for. Every wall, every window, every tile was a gift from me. My chest tightened. I wanted to scream, but no sound came. Instead, a strange calm spread through me, a quiet, heavy numbness that told me this was not just a careless text. It was truth, the truth about where I stood in his life. But what Ethan and Madison did not know was that while they were busy shutting me out, I had already started preparing something they would never see coming. Something that would make them remember who built everything they were now standing on. Before I continue, I just want to take a moment to appreciate every single one of you watching. To all my loyal subscribers, thank you from the bottom of my heart for your continuous love and support. And to those who are new here, welcome. I cannot wait for you to hit that subscribe button because that is the fuel that keeps stories like this alive. Your engagement, your likes, your comments, your shares means the world to me. Now, back to my story. My name is Debbie, and I'm 57 years old. I live in a quiet neighborhood in Wycombe, USA. Life has never been easy for me, but I have always been a fighter. After my husband Robert passed away when Ethan was just 12, everything changed. I went from being a stay-at-home mother to working 2 jobs to just keep a roof over our heads. I worked as a school secretary during the day and cleaned offices at night. There were days when my hands were so sore I could not even close them properly, but I did not stop. I kept telling myself it will all be worth it when Ethan has a better life. He was my pride, my joy, my purpose. And when he graduated college, the first in our family to do so, I thought my sacrifices had finally paid off. He was smart, kind, and ambitious. Then he met Madison. At first, she seemed sweet, polite even. She had that kind of charm that could melt a room in seconds. I was genuinely happy for them. But over time, little things started to change. Ethan stopped calling as often. Our Sunday dinners became less frequent. Then the invitations stopped altogether. When I asked why, Ethan would always say, "Mom, Madison just wants to spend some time alone with me. You understand, right?" And I did. At least, I thought I did. I wanted to respect their space. I told myself it was normal for a young couple to want time for themselves. Then Madison suggested that they needed a new home, a place that would help them start fresh. Ethan came to me one evening, his voice low, almost embarrassed. "Mom, Madison and I found this beautiful house, but we can't afford it right now. The bank is asking for a down payment we just do not have." I looked at him, my son, who once held my hand to cross the street, now a grown man struggling to build his own life, and I said the words that would later haunt me. "Don't worry, Ethan. I'll take care of it." It took nearly all my retirement savings and the sale of a small piece of land my husband left behind, but I did it. I wanted my son to have a house filled with laughter and love, the kind I once dreamed for him. I even furnished it. Every couch, every carton, every plate. Madison picked most of them, and I gladly paid. She smiled and called me Mom then. But looking back, that word was hollow. The day the house keys were handed over, Ethan hugged me quickly and said, "Thank you, Mom. We couldn't have done this without you." I cried tears of joy. I thought that moment was proof that all the years of struggle had meaning. Until last night. That message, that one cruel message, shattered everything. You will not be joining us. My wife prefers to keep it only family. The irony twisted like a knife in my chest. Only family. I sat in my dimly lit living room, staring at the walls that had witnessed years of sacrifice. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Ethan. Please understand, Mom. Madison just wants space. Maybe we can meet sometime later. Later. That word burned. It was the same word I had used so many times. Later, when things get better. Later, when I have more time. But later never came. As I sat there, a part of me broke, but another part of me, an older, wiser part, started to rise. I remembered something my husband used to say when life got cruel. Debbie, never let anyone forget who made the foundation they stand on. I wiped my tears, stood up, and whispered to myself, all right, Ethan, you don't want me there, fine, but you will soon remember who built a life you are now living. That night, I pulled out my old metal box filled with documents, the ones I hadn't touched in years. My hands trembled as I lifted the folder that contained every legal paper for the house, the ownership deed, the payment records, the mortgage terms. And then I saw something I had almost forgotten about. A small clause printed in fine letters, one that would change everything.
I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that message again, each word cutting deeper than the last. By morning, I was done crying. I had no tears left, only a stillness that came from being wounded too many times by people you love. I poured myself a cup of black coffee, sat by the kitchen window, and opened that folder again. The papers smelled faintly of dust and ink. As I read through them, my eyes landed on that clause I had almost forgotten. It was something my lawyer had advised years ago when I was helping Ethan apply for a smaller loan. Back then, I wanted to protect him from bad decisions, so I made sure any property I helped him acquire was legally tied to my name until full transfer after 5 years. It was supposed to be a safety net, a quiet way to keep him secure. Now, it had become something else entirely. According to that clause, the ownership of the new house could only be transferred after I signed a final release agreement, which I had not done. That meant, on paper, the house was still legally mine. I set the paper down and whispered to myself, "You tried to shut me out of your life, Ethan, but you forgot who signed your beginning." But before I could do anything, I needed to understand why. Why did my son, the boy who used to hug me so tightly before bed, turn his back on me like this? So I started replaying everything, every conversation, every red flag I ignored. After my husband Robert died, Ethan and I became inseparable. He was just 12, and grief had carved something deep in both of us. We leaned on each other. I promised him I would always be there, and he promised the same. But when Madison entered the picture, that bond began to fade, slowly, quietly. At first, she was kind, always smiling, always offering to help. She brought warmth into Ethan's life, and I was grateful. I thought, finally, he has someone to love him. But that warmth turned cold in small, subtle ways. Like the time I brought over Ethan's favorite chicken soup after he had surgery. Madison thanked me politely at the door, but never let me in. She said the house was messy and Ethan needed rest. Later, when I called, Ethan said, "Mom, you should have called first. Madison gets anxious when people come by unannounced." Or the Thanksgiving when she insisted they host at their place for the first time. I arrived early with my homemade pie, but Madison greeted me with a smile so thin it could cut glass. By the end of the evening, I sat alone at the far end of the table while her family filled the seats beside Ethan. Each time, I told myself it was fine, that Madison was just adjusting, that love sometimes needed space. But space became distance. Distance became silence. Last year, I overheard something at a family gathering that made everything click. Madison's cousin, drunk and careless, whispered to another guest, "Madison says Ethan's mom is too controlling. She told Ethan that their marriage will never work if he keeps letting her interfere." My chest went hollow. I smiled through that dinner, but my heart shattered in silence. After that, Ethan changed completely. Every call was shorter, every visit felt forced, and when they finally told me about the house they wanted to buy, I saw it as my chance to bring us close again. I thought helping them would show Madison I was not her enemy, that maybe she would see me as part of their family. I was wrong. By mid-morning, I made a decision. I was not going to beg for love that should come freely, but I was also not going to let them trample on the years of blood and sweat that built that house. I picked up my phone and called my old friend Samuel, who happened to be a real estate attorney. "Debbie," he greeted cheerfully, "it has been a while. What brings you to my line?" I hesitated before speaking. "Sam, I need to understand something about property rights." He went quiet for a second, his tone shifting. "Everything all right?" I swallowed hard. I need to know what happens if I decide to take back a house that was paid for in full by me, but not yet transferred legally. "Do you have the deed?" "Yes, in my name." He exhaled sharply. "Then technically, Debbie, it is yours. You have every right to revoke access or ownership. What is going on?" I smiled weakly, though he couldn't see it. "Just, family matters." He agreed to meet me that afternoon at his office in downtown Wycombe. Sitting across from Samuel felt like stepping into another world. His office was sleek, lined with law books and the faint scent of old paper. He skimmed through the documents I brought, nodding as he read. Finally, he leaned back and said, "Debbie, you have complete ownership until you sign a release agreement. They can't sell, transfer, or even legally claim that house without your consent." "So I can take it back?" I asked softly. He looked at me with a mix of surprise and sympathy. "You can, but are you sure you want to? It could destroy your relationship with your son." I looked out the window, watching people rush by on the street below. "Sam," I said, my voice steady, "I think that relationship was already destroyed." As I left the office, a strange peace washed over me. For the first time in months, I felt in control. I wasn't just a broken mother anymore. I was a woman with power.
But then, just as I reached my car, my phone buzzed again. A new message from Ethan. Mom, please do not come to the housewarming next week. Madison's parents are flying in and she wants it to be private. You understand, right? Private. I stared at the screen for a long time before locking my phone. Yes, Ethan. I understand perfectly. What they didn't know was that by the time that party began, the house they were celebrating would no longer belong to them.
The next morning, the air in Wycombe felt unusually still. I remember stepping outside to fetch the mail, the cold autumn wind brushing against my face. The trees were already shedding their golden leaves, and the ground was a patchwork of orange and brown. It looked peaceful, almost beautiful. But inside me, there was a storm brewing, a silent, deliberate storm. I had made up my mind. There would be no tears this time, no emotional outburst, no confrontation. I was done begging to belong. I would act, not as a mother scorned, but as a woman reclaiming what was rightfully hers. That afternoon, I called Samuel again. Sam, I said, I want to move forward with the legal process. He paused for a moment. Are you absolutely sure, Debbie? I looked around my quiet living room. The walls felt emptier than ever. Yes, I am, I said firmly, but I do not want them to know yet, not until everything is ready. He sighed. All right, I will prepare the paperwork. It will take about a week to process. You will have to sign a few things, and then we can file the ownership revocation. Do it, I said. I hung up and sat there for a long while, staring at the family photographs on my mantel. Ethan as a baby, his small hand clutching my finger. His first day of school, his graduation, his wedding. In every photo, I saw the same boy I once knew, the same smile, the same eyes that used to light up whenever he saw me. Somewhere along the way, I lost him, not to death, but to pride, to manipulation, to a woman who saw me as competition instead of family. A few days passed, and the preparations for their housewarming party became the talk of the neighborhood. Madison was planning something grand, live music, catering, guests flying in. She even had a florist decorate the lawn. I heard all about it from my neighbor Ruth, who lived 2 streets over. Oh, Debbie, did you hear? She said, her voice low with gossip. Ethan and Madison are hosting a huge celebration for their new home. Everyone's invited except, she hesitated, except me, I finished for her, smiling faintly. Ruth frowned. I do not understand that girl. After all you did for them. I shrugged. Some lessons have to be learned the hard way. Inside, though, my heart ached. I would have given anything to be there, not for the food or the party, but just to see my son happy, to see him proud of what he built. But how could he be proud when he had forgotten the hands that built it for him? That night, I received an envelope from Samuel. Inside were the documents I needed to sign. My name printed in bold letters at the top of the ownership deed, Deborah L. Watson. Beneath it, Ethan's name was listed as secondary beneficiary, conditional upon my release signature, which, of course, had never been given. I read every line twice before picking up my pen. My hand trembled as I wrote my signature, not because I doubted my decision, but because I understood the finality of it. Once this was done, there would be no going back. When I was done, I placed the papers neatly back into the envelope and whispered to myself, "You wanted distance, Ethan. You will have it." A few days later, Samuel called. "It is done," he said. "The documents are filed. Legally, the house now reverts to your full ownership. They will be notified soon." I exhaled slowly. "Thank you, Sam." He hesitated. "Debbie, one more thing. I came across something while reviewing the contract." "What is it?"
There's a clause that allows you to reclaim possession immediately if the occupants are found to be residing there under false assumptions of ownership, meaning if they are hosting that party under the impression that the house is theirs. He paused, almost as if testing my reaction. I finished his sentence. Then I have the right to reclaim it on the spot. He sighed. Yes, I figured you should know. A strange calm spread through me. Thank you, Sam. That will not be necessary just yet. But deep down, I already knew it would be. The day of the party arrived like the calm before a storm. The sun was bright, the air crisp. I drove past their street quietly, parking 2 blocks away where I could not be seen. The sound of laughter carried through the air, music, clinking glasses, guests flying in. She even had a florist decorate the lawn. Madison was glowing, greeting guests like the queen of her palace. Ethan stood beside her, smiling, his arm around his waist. I watched from my car, hidden behind tinted windows. My heart twisted painfully, but I didn't move. Then something caught my eye, an expensive banner across the gate that read, "Welcome to our new home, Mr. and Mrs. Evans." Ours. Theirs. I felt the words sink into me like stones. But what hurt most was seeing Madison's parents posing proudly for pictures, while I, his mother, sat in silence, watching from the shadows. A flash of memory hit me. Ethan, at 10 years old, tugging my sleeve, whispering, "Mom, when I grow up, I'm going to buy you a big house." Now here he was, celebrating a house I bought, pretending it never was mine. As the evening light dimmed, I reached into my purse and touched the envelope with the final ownership document inside, the one that confirmed the house was mine again. I had brought it just in case. I didn't plan to use it that night, but when I saw Madison raise her glass for a toast and say, "To our forever home, the house of our dreams," something inside me shifted. It wasn't anger. It wasn't revenge. It was justice. I stepped out of my car and began walking towards the house. Each step felt heavier than the last. The music echoed in the distance, the laughter fading into a dull hum in my ears. By the time I reached the gate, a familiar voice called out from behind me, firm, calm, and certain. "Mrs. Watson," Samuel's voice said, "we need to talk. Something came up about the property. You're going to want to hear this." I turned to him, my pulse racing. "What is it?" He looked straight in my eye. "There is a hidden clause you never saw before, and it changes everything." I froze when Samuel said those words. A hidden clause that changes everything? We stepped aside from the noise of the party into the shadows by the street light. The sounds of laughter and music from Ethan's house seemed to grow distant, as though the world was holding its breath. Samuel pulled out a folded document from his briefcase, the same one I had signed earlier in the week. "Debbie," he began carefully, "I did some extra digging this morning, just to make sure everything was airtight before filing. I found something unusual in the property's supplemental deed, something your late husband added years ago without removing." My heart skipped. "Robert?" He nodded. "Apparently, when Robert refinanced the property that you later sold to fund Ethan's house, he attached a clause stating that any property purchased or transferred using those funds would remain within Watson family ownership, not marital extensions. Meaning, legally, Madison cannot claim a single inch of that house, no matter what happens." For a moment, I could not breathe. It felt as though my husband, gone for 15 years, had reached out from beyond the grave to protect me. "So the house belongs entirely to you, Debbie," Samuel said firmly. "Ethan can live there with your permission, but Madison has no legal right to occupy it, claim it, or even list it under her name. If she tries, It will constitute property fraud. I blinked back tears. Robert, you old fox, I whispered under my breath. Samuel smiled faintly. You wanted justice. I believe this is it. What you do with it now is up to you. I turned my eyes toward the glowing house, the music echoing softly in the cool evening air. It was beautiful, every light shining, every detail perfect. My money, my sweat, my sacrifice, and now, legally, my house again. I stood there for a long moment, torn between heartbreak and resolution. I could have walked away quietly, let them enjoy their illusion for a while longer, but something inside me stirred, a voice that said, they need to understand, not out of spite, but so they never forget where they came from. I squared my shoulders and started walking toward the gate. When I stepped inside, heads turned, conversations slowed. Madison was the first to notice. Her smile faltered for a second before she quickly masked it. Oh, Debbie, she said sweetly, clutching her champagne glass. We were not expecting you. Her voice was syrupy, dripping with forced politeness. Ethan turned, visibly startled. Mom, I thought I texted you. Yes, I said calmly. I received your message. I simply decided to attend anyway. A murmur rippled through the guests. I could feel their eyes on me, judging, whispering, but I kept my composure. I will not take much of your time. I continued, my voice steady. I just came to congratulate you both, properly. After all, this home is quite meaningful to me. Madison's smile tightened. That is very kind of you, but perhaps now is not the best. I raised a hand, cutting her off. Actually, Madison, I think now is the perfect time. I reached into my purse and took out the sealed envelope, the same one Samuel had handed me days ago. I just wanted everyone here to know that this house, the one that you were all standing in, celebrating, was fully paid for by me. Every single cent. And as of last week, I have legally revoked its transfer. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Ethan's face turned pale. Madison's eyes whitened in disbelief. What are you saying? Ethan stammered. I am saying, I replied, keeping my tone calm, that this house belongs to me. It always did. You were merely living here under an assumption of ownership that was never finalized. Madison's composure shattered. That is ridiculous. You gave this house to us. I offered it. I never transferred it. You see, Madison, my late husband, God rest his soul, had a way of protecting his family. He made sure no property purchased through our legacy could ever leave the Watson name, which means, stepping closer, meeting her eyes, this house is mine, and legally, you have no right to it. Madison's lips quivered as she looked around the room, desperate for someone to defend her. Ethan, say something! But Ethan just stood there, his mouth opening and closing like he had lost his words. His eyes met mine, pleading, confused, ashamed. Mom, you cannot do this, he whispered. I softened just a little. I already did. I turned to the guests, offering a faint, graceful smile. I am sorry for interrupting your evening. Please enjoy what is left of the night. I simply came to deliver the truth. And with that, I walked out. Outside, the air was cold, but freeing. Samuel followed a few steps behind me. That was quite a scene, he said quietly. I exhaled slowly, my breath turning white in the air. I did not want to embarrass them, But sometimes people need to feel the consequences of what they take for granted. He nodded. So what now? I looked back at the house one last time, the home that had once been a dream and had turned into a battlefield of love, betrayal, and silence. Now, I said softly, I let them live with the lesson. I will not evict them, not yet, but they will know they live under the roof their pride tried to erase. Weeks passed. The silence between Ethan and I stretched, heavy, but necessary. Then one morning, a knock came on my door. When I opened it, Ethan stood there, alone. His eyes were red, his voice trembling. "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't see what she was doing. I thought you were trying to control us. I was wrong." I felt my throat tighten. "Ethan," he fell to his knees. "I don't care about the house anymore. I just want my mom back." Tears finally came, hot, painful, cleansing. I knelt beside him and pulled him into my arms. "You already have her," I said. "You always did." Madison eventually left. The house remained under my name, and Ethan moved into a smaller place nearby. We are rebuilding, slowly, broken pieces forming something new. Sometimes I drive past that house and smile, not out of pride, but gratitude, because I finally learned that love should never require you to erase yourself to keep it. Never give more than your heart can afford to lose. Gratitude is the soil where love grows. Without it, everything dies. If you made it to the end of this story, thank you so much for watching. Please do not forget to like and share and subscribe to the channel. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were in my place? Would you forgive, or would you take everything back?